out. And this is tip number 5. So we're going to have a look at good debt and bad debt and why inflation is a friend. So we're always taught typically that any debt is bad. Okay, and this is something I was taught, and many of yourselves probably was also taught the same. Now, fundamentally, certain debt is bad when there's high interest on it. You know, credit cards, loans, or items that typically go down in value. So they actually devalue because the asset itself is not going up. So when you buy a car, for an example, and you take out £20,000 to buy that car, typically within 5 years, that car is going to be worth about 4. So it's dropped £16,000. Okay, and the tip here today really is to get your understanding around why having mortgage debt is not actually a bad thing, because it is actually the opposite of taking a car out or a credit card where there's no actual asset underneath it or the asset devalues. So if we take another example where you buy a property, this could be for residential or buy-to-let, and you bought it for 100,000, you know, typically within 5 years, you'd safe to say it's worth at least 120. Fantastic, it's gone up £20,000. So we consider that as good debt. That is good debt because it's gone up in value. And not only that, is when you originally bought this house, you would have had to have put a deposit in. Okay? And that deposit, 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever it is, still sits inside the house, outside of recession, which do happen. The thing with the car, as soon as you put the money in, it starts to drop. So this is classed as good debt, and a car, credit card, is what we know as bad debt. Now, just to kind of go one step further on this, what you'll normally find with a lot of bad debt, sadly, that the interest rate is very high. Most credit cards are 20% a year, most cars are 7% a year. What you'll find with property at the moment is you can get mortgages as low as 1.5%, up to a range of about 4%. And that's your typical lending range. Now you have to ask yourself is why do we have such a variance in interest rates between bad debt and good debt? Is because when the lender, the creditor, in this case the mortgage provider, we'll call it Halifax or whoever it is, lends in, they know this type of asset will go up in value. Okay, now when Black Horse or whoever, it could be anybody, these are just examples, lends you money on this asset, they know it goes down in value. So there's more chance of you actually defaulting it because you've got less asset at the end to pay off anything. When this is where here, there's always equity to go after within property. So that's good debt versus bad debt. Now, I've also added here an extra bit on inflation and why it's your friend, because what I'll do is, let me just scribble this off, is what inflation does is not only does it, see, everyone looks at inflation as a bad thing, okay? So we have inflation, and it's commonly referred to as prices going up, which is technically correct, okay? You have the consumer price index and some of indexes that, over time show the price of, if we do price here, number of years here, is, certain food items, it typically does this, okay? And that is correct. That is a typically inflation around 1 to 4% year on year, okay? Now, the good thing with inflation is even though it sends the prices up, it also erodes debt, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? So if you take an example, if you borrowed £1,000 back in 1980, that would have been considered a huge amount of money, a lot of money. You know, most people would have taken, you know, half the year to earn that sort of money. Okay, equivalent today is probably at least 10 to 15 times worth more than that. So over time, what inflation has done is made this less. So if this was a debt you took out on a house, let's say that was your deposit from your house, okay, and it was a 10% deposit, so the house was worth 10,000, okay, and you put in 1,000, that's your deposit, okay. Move on from 1980 to present day, which is 2020, okay. You have the same house, still exists, but it's now worth, I don't know, let's say 150k, okay. So what inflation has done is it's carried the house price up, okay, but what it actually does is erode the actual debt in value as well. It erodes your original debt. So even though back here that would have been considered as 10% of the value, which would have been a lot, if you compare the same one now to this, I'm not great at maths, but it's something daft like 0.7% or whatever it is, I don't know, significantly less, okay. Is it 10%, 1%? Yeah, significantly less. So it's gone from being this to this. So you now have, if you took it as an interest only, say, you've got £1,000. So we bought it for 10,000. Okay, so it's gone up to 150, and you bought it and you borrowed 9. So when you minus your mortgage, this is not to add, you know, interest rates, just to keep the numbers very simple, it's now worth 141k. Okay, and that's yours. That's, you know, equity. That's equity in the deal. So that's what inflation does. So as much as inflation is known here, guys, as and girls, is putting up prices, your cost of milk and other items, it also is your friend in other areas. And typically we find houses do go up in value with inflation. And at the same time, it's eating away at the debt. So whatever your debt is today, in 20 years, that same amount is not the same amount as it today. So yeah, hope that helps.